DISOVERED, how one heartwarming act for a veteran's dog triggered an amazing marine mobilization. In the heart of rural Ohio, a miracle was quietly stirring. Jim, a humble veteran, found solace in the gentle wag of his dog Max's tail. But when Max fell gravely ill, the lifeline of hope that tethered Jim to the present was threatened. The burden of mounting veterinary bills pressed down on him like a weight he couldn't bear. Tears threatened to spill as he felt the walls of despair closing in. Little did he know that the very heart of his tight-knit community was about to change everything. As Jim trailed behind Max on their usual walk, the crisp Ohio air brushed against his skin like a balm, yet his heart felt heavy. Every bark from Max echoed Jim's own longing for companionship and comfort, a lifeline after years of battling both physical and emotional scars from his military service. Max was not just a dog. He was a constant presence in a world where shadows often enveloped Jim. His friends in the town of Cedar Grove didn't miss the shadows that haunted Jim. Hushed whispers swept through the barbecue that evening, where laughter intertwined with old war stories around the grill. The Marines, his brothers in arms, noticed the tightness in Jim's smile and the absent spark in his eyes. When they pulled him aside, letting him know they had his back, it ignited a flame of camaraderie that was too powerful to ignore. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The brothers talked about hosting a fundraiser to cover Max's medical expenses, and then, the sentiment spread like wildfire. Posts about Jim and Max filled social media, inspiring an outpouring of compassion. People dug deep into their pockets, showing up at their local shops and handing cash, all for a man they admired, a man who once wore the uniform with pride. Just as the town lifted him, a storm loomed on the horizon. Out of nowhere, Jim's estranged son appeared, the last person he wanted to see. Old wounds reopened as accusations and hurtful words drew lines warmer than summer's heat. That tension hung thick in the air, threatening to drown out the kindness and goodwill that swelled from the community's heart towards Jim. While the Marines unfurled plans for the fundraiser, they realized that what they were building was more than just financial support for Max. It was a chance to mend the fragments of Jim's family. Conflict might rear its ugly head, but with unwavering loyalty and brotherly love, they sought to rally the town around Jim, not just for the dog, but for the healing of a father and son. With every step closer to the event, Jim felt the weight in his chest. Max's health hung in the balance, and so did his chance for a long-overdue connection with his son. Could the love of a community and the strength forged in service finally conquer the divides of the past? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the stakes couldn't be higher. The day of the fundraiser dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the tumult within Jim's heart. Cedar Grove was buzzing with energy, the kind that only comes from a community rallying behind one of its own. Banners hung proudly on every corner, "Help for Jim and Max," echoed through the streets, and the smell of barbecue drifted through the air, making stomachs rumble with anticipation. As Jim stood next to the grill, flipping burgers alongside his Marine brothers, he felt a mix of gratitude and anxiety. Friendly faces surrounded him, smiles shining back as if to shield him from the storm brewing inside. The laughter and lightness reminded him of the brotherhood he'd once fought beside, but he felt so deeply unworthy of it now. Max, with his own little bandana for the occasion, seemed blissfully unaware of the tension. He trotted around, soaking in affection from kids who were all too willing to share a hot dog or two. But Jim's mind drifted towards the figure he had seen only hours before, his son, Kyle. Just the thought of him cast a shadow over the day's brightness. When Kyle had shown up, it felt like a flash flood, washing away all the preparations Jim had mentally curated. Instead of the supportive son he had longed to see, Kyle's face was etched with resentment. "You think you can just ignore me while playing the victim with your dog?" He spat, words sharper than any shrapnel Jim had survived. These memories clung to him as he flipped another burger. The distance between father and son seemed to stretch further than the miles that had kept them apart for so long. Could the collective love of their small town melt those icy barriers? Each sizzling patty on the grill ripped through Jim's thoughts. Would the warmth of community be enough to thaw Kyle's heart? As the afternoon sun cast golden rays, people started pouring in, carrying baked goods, donations, and stories of how Jim had touched their lives. The band began to play, and the sound of a familiar tune brought laughter and cheer, lifting the atmosphere. Jim's heart swelled as he watched his friends band together, raised voices uniting in song, each note a reaffirmation of support. But, just when he thought he could breathe, he saw Kyle leaning against a tree, arms crossed, eyes fixated on the crowd. A flash of vulnerability washed over the young man's face before it hardened again. Jim felt a piercing ache seeing that struggle. Could they forge something new from the ashes of their past? The moment arrived when the fundraising raffle was announced, and excitement filled the air. Jim, buoyed by his brother's nudges, stepped up to the mic, voice shaking but determined. "Thank you, everyone. This isn't just about Max, it's about healing, forgiveness." His eyes flickered toward Kyle, who remained distant but solemnly listening. "It's about family." A crack in the armor. For a brief second, Jim thought he might see a glimmer of hope in his son's gaze. Then a little boy ran past Kyle, bumping into him with a soft apologetic smile. Kyle's stern expression melted briefly into a smile, reminding Jim that perhaps there was still time to reclaim that lost connection. With the fundraiser underway and laughter bubbling around him, Jim realized he was no longer alone in this fight. The community embraced not only him but every broken piece of history as well. But when the sky darkened and clouds rolled in, Jim wondered, would the storm shatter this fragile moment? As thunder rumbled in the distance, echoing Jim's own fears, he caught Kyle's eye once more. Stay, the unspoken word lingered between them, but would the storm be too much for them both to bear? With everything hanging in the balance, Jim's heart raced. What would happen if the clouds broke, and they were both exposed to the elements? Could the love that had kindled in Cedar Grove shelter them from the rain? The tension pulled tighter, as unknown possibilities loomed like the approaching thunder, uncertainty hanging heavy in the air. As the first fat drops of rain began to splatter against the ground, laughter faltered and heads turned skyward. Jim's heart sank. The vibrant energy of the fundraiser felt at risk. A storm could wash away not only the celebration but the newfound hope he felt creeping into the cracks of his relationship with Kyle. But then he noticed something: the way the community sprang into action. Friends rushed to grab tents, blankets, and anything to keep the event alive. The gathering shifted, the barbecue smoke mingling with the scent of rain-soaked earth. "We won't let a little weather dampen our spirits," an older woman shouted, rallying the crowd. Jim's gaze landed back on Kyle. The boy stood there, rain running from his hair to his jawline, eyes darting nervously between the laughter and the downpour. Jim felt a pulse of determination surge through him. Rain or shine, this was their chance, his chance to reach out. "Hey, Kyle!" Jim called, his voice laced with hope, breaking through the storm's rumbling. Kyle's head jerked as he turned to face his father. "Come help me with Max." That was it, that simple invitation. For a fleeting moment, Kyle hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his features. But then he pushed off the tree and moved toward Jim, boots sloshing in puddles. Just the sight of him made Jim's heart race. "Let's make sure Max is comfortable," Jim said, lowering himself to the brown dog beside the grill. Max, blissfully oblivious to the storm, nuzzled into their knees. "He's going to need a dry spot." Kyle knelt down, quieter now, eyes steady on Max. "You sure he's okay, Dad? I mean, he could get sick." That small concern, that little show of affection, struck Jim's heart like a bolt of lightning. "He'll be fine. We just need to keep him close." The connection between them felt delicate, yet raw with the possibility of healing. They both reached for Max at the same time, and fingertips brushed. There it was, the tiniest spark of understanding. Around them, the fundraiser continued, even as rain fell heavier, people huddling beneath makeshift shelters. Someone began passing out warm cups of cocoa, and soon laughter erupted again, filling the air as the band adapted their tunes, playing joyful songs suited for rain. For Jim, the sweetness of that sound mixed with the weight of the moment. It was all so painfully beautiful. The community was sheltering him both physically from the storm and emotionally from his fears. And Kyle? He was still here, still talking. Can we walk with him? Kyle asked, glancing up at Jim, uncertainty still flickering but now with more warmth. Absolutely. Let us give him some love. They both helped Max on his leash, and Jim could scarcely believe how easy it was. Kyle pulled up the hood of his jacket, and Jim stepped alongside him. They began to stroll through the crowd, dodging puddles and warmly wrapped individuals. As they walked, a few friends called out, cheering on their little trio. Kyle's strained face softened, and improvement winked like sunlight through the parted clouds. Maybe next time, Kyle said tentatively, we could do something like this with without the rain. Next time, just us and Max, Jim replied, his heart swelling with a mix of hope and cautious joy. I promise. The bond felt tenuous, yet it was a beginning one Jim longed for amidst the chaos of emotions swirling in the storm. As they moved further into the crowd, laughter bounced all around, giving Jim a sense of belonging again, one that felt within reach. But just then, another boom of thunder echoed overhead, more menacing this time, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Jim glanced at Kyle, both of them caught between the laughter and the burgeoning storm, the past and whatever might lie ahead. Would this moment sustain them when the skies finally unleashed? What if there were more than rain coming their way? The answer hung uncertainly in the darkest clouds above them. Would tomorrow dawn brighter, or would storms once again threaten to wash everything away? The rain, relentless and cool, circled around them as they walked with Max. Jim felt a wave of appreciation for the warmth that clung to him from the community. It reminded him that he wasn't alone in this journey, no matter how shaky it felt. He glanced sideways at Kyle, whose face was now a mask of concentration as he navigated the puddles, determined not to slip. Dad, can we get him a treat after? Kyle asked, his curiosity peeking through the clouds of uncertainty that still lingered. Of course. We can swing by the pet store on the way home if you want, Jim replied, delighting in this small exchange. I mean, like a big treat. A really big one, Kyle emphasized, his excitement a shadow of the boy he used to be, a boy he wished to bring back. Absolutely, Jim chuckled. How about a whole bag of those peanut butter biscuits? Kyle grinned, and for a moment, the clouds didn't feel so oppressive. As they continued their walk, Jim noticed more people joining the parade, sheltering under umbrellas and sharing laughter as they danced around puddles. One couple passed by, and the man, drenched yet smiling, called out, "Now that's a family. Show that pup some love." Their words struck Jim like they found a soft spot in his heart, making him realize how desperately he craved acknowledgement. He looked down at Kyle, who had brightened at the compliment. It was a minor thing, but Jim felt it ripple through the air, a tiny victory in their efforts to reconnect amidst the storms they were facing. Just then, their friend Sarah appeared, wringing out her rain-soaked hair. "There you are. I've been looking for you," she exclaimed, throwing an arm around Kyle's shoulder. "What do you think? A little rain never hurt anyone, right?" "Right," Kyle chimed in, laughter echoing in the downpour. As they made their way through the sea of smiling faces, Jim's heart swelled. These people were not just neighbors, they were family. They were pillars who held the burden of adversity high and celebrated the joys of life despite the clouds overhead. Yet, as that comforting warmth enveloped him, he couldn't shake the unease lurking in his chest. What if this feeling was fleeting? Suddenly, a loud clap of thunder echoed again, and the rain intensified, forcing everyone closer together. Kyle jumped slightly, his hand gripping the leash tighter. "It's just thunder," Jim soothed, rubbing Kyle's back. "Nothing to be scared of. Just nature being loud." But Jim could feel a similar dread tingling under his skin. What if the thunder wasn't just at the surface but foreshadowed troubles deeper within their hearts? He looked at Kyle, who was still trying to shake off his anxiety. His expression says more than words could. The fundraiser carried on around them, yet Jim felt the weight bearing down a quiet urgency. They needed to find a way through this churning weather, both outside and within. More moments like this, with laughter and warmth, would help, but could he pull that from Kyle? "Hey, Kyle," Jim asked, aiming to ground them amidst the storm. "If you could have any dog treat in the world, what would it be?" Kyle's eyes brightened with thought. "Maybe one with sprinkles. You know, the ones the bakery always has." "Sprinkled dog treats it is," Jim said, grinning back. As they reached the edge of the gathering, where the music wafted and familiar faces lingered, Jim heard something else. The faint sound of sirens in the distance, low and foreboding. He stopped mid-step, troubled by the cacophony stirring through the air. "Do you hear that?" "Yeah, what's that?" Kyle's carefree demeanor shifted. The clouds weren't the only thing they needed to worry about. Could the day's storms merely be a prelude to something more tumultuous headed their way? With anxious breaths, they stood at the edge, and for the first time, Jim felt the slippery nature of hope. Would they navigate whatever storms awaited them together? The question hung heavy, unanswered, just as concerns flickered across the horizon, dancing with the raindrops. The sirens grew louder, slicing through the cheerful atmosphere of the fundraiser. Jim's heart raced. He could feel Kyle's grip on Max tighten, a wave of unease washing over them both. "Dad, what's going on?" Kyle's voice trembled, a hint of fear creeping in. "I don't know, buddy. Let South stay close to Sarah," Jim replied, scanning the crowd, searching for familiar faces that might provide reassurance. The warmth of community they'd felt moments ago now felt tenuous. Sarah pulled Kyle closer. "It's probably nothing," she said, attempting to inject some cheerfulness into the moment. "Just a small emergency somewhere. People can call for help, right?" People started moving, some hustling away while others craned their necks to see. Jim resisted the urge to follow their wide-eyed curiosity. Instead, he turned the other way, towards the relative safety of the pet adoption booth nearby. Max wagged his tail, blissfully ignorant of the brewing storm both from the skies and within Jim's chest. "Let's check out some dog treats," Jim suggested, hoping to distract them. He knelt next to the booth, pushing aside his own worry for Kyle's sake. "What do you think, Max? Should we pick some out?" Kyle chuckled softly, and for a moment, the tension lightened. "Yeah. Let's get the best ones." As they selected a few snacks to take home, Jim stole a glance back at the crowd. There was something in the air now, a charged energy that felt out of place with the gloomy day. Whispered conversations buzzed like bees around a flower. Then he heard a name spoken in low tones: Private Thompson. The name sent a jolt through him. Jim didn't know a lot of warriors personally, but he remembered the stories, the sacrifices made by veterans returning home with wounds that ran deeper than skin. The rain continued, heavy and unrelenting, but it felt distant now, muted by a growing sense of urgency. "Hey, Kyle," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Let's get those treats and go find out what's happening, okay?" "Okay," Kyle replied, eyes glistening with a mix of excitement, worry, and the determination to be brave. The trio moved back through the thrumming crowd, heads turning, eyes darting toward a nearby park where some folks had gathered in a tight circle. Murmurs grew louder as they approached, drawing them in. Jim felt himself become a part of the swarm. The faint thump of a drumbeat pulsed steadily through the downpour, resonating deep in his chest. "Why are they all standing there?" Kyle asked, peering over the shoulders of adults. "I think there's something happening," Jim explained, straining his neck to see. Suddenly, an announcement carried through the rain, spine-tingling and clear. "We urge everyone to support our veterans. A local hero is in need of help, and we need your voices to rally support. Let us show them they're not alone." Heart pounding, Jim stepped closer. A moment ago, they had been joking about dog treats, and now he could feel the air change, laden with purpose and a demand for action. Kyle tugged at Jim's sleeve. "Are we helping?" "Yes," Jim replied, suddenly certain of it. "We're part of this. All of us together." The storm outside felt like nothing compared to the fire igniting within community hearts. In that moment, Jim realized something profound. The rain might have brought uncertainty, but it also brought them together in a way he hadn't anticipated. This could be a turning moment for Kyle, for him. As Jim scanned the crowd, searching for ways to get involved, he spotted a familiar face, an old buddy from high school who had also served. Their eyes met, and the connection sparked something deep. He felt the thunder rumble again, not just from the sky but from the hearts of those unified under a common cause. "Let's go," he said to Kyle, stirring a determination within him. But as they moved, sirens blared once more, louder than before, echoing ominously as another thought loomed in Jim's mind. What if they were too late? What if they didn't act soon enough? Together, they stepped into the unknown, ready to make a difference. What awaited them in this mix of chaos and determination? One thing was certain: there was no looking back now. And at that moment, as they pushed forward into the storm of emotions and decisions, Jim knew he had to confront his fears about the past, for Kyle's sake and their future. Would this be the moment that altered everything, not just outside their cozy home, but within themselves? Jim pushed through the crowd, following the magnetic pull of urgency spiraling in the air. Each step felt like a heartbeat, quickening both his pulse and his resolve. He glanced down at Kyle, his son's innocent face devoid of the dark worries that pressed on Jim's mind. There was a fire in Kyle's eyes, a glimmer of bravery that reminded Jim of the scattered memories of his own youth. Pressing forward, they reached the edge of the gathering. The sound of upbeat chants and solemn calls echoed around them, rising above the relentless drizzle. Jim felt a shiver of pride and anxiety coiling within him. This was more than just a fundraiser, it was a movement. "Look!" Kyle pointed, his voice tinged with excitement. A woman held a sign that read, "Help us help our heroes." Another person was collecting donations, a soft smile lighting up their dripping face. The sight was heartening amidst the chaos. "Let us see how we can help, okay?" Jim said, feeling the urgency mingle with purpose. They stepped closer to the group, who were drawing together in solidarity as if the rain itself was stitching them into a tighter, warmer connection. "Come on, buddy," Jim urged Kyle, kneeling down to meet him at eye level. "We're going to give these heroes our support. This is our chance." Kyle nodded vigorously, a mix of determination and innocence fueling his eagerness. He tugged on Jim's hand, pulling him toward the donation table. A banner hung overhead, drenched from the rain but still bright with messages of hope and resilience. As they approached, Jim saw a young man standing with a military jacket, patches emblazoned on his arms that told tales of pride and service. The man had a kind face, shadowed under the brim of a cap. He truly seemed to embody the heart of this gathering. "I'm Adam," the soldier said with a firm handshake, his voice crackling but warm. "We're raising funds to help a fellow veteran and his best friend. His dog's been in and out of the vet and he can't afford the bills." Jim felt a swell of anger and empathy. "That's terrible. Who's the veteran?" "Private Thompson," Adam replied. "He served in the same unit I did. This man laid his life on the line for our country. We owe him a lot." A mix of sorrow and admiration coursed through Jim. "What can we do? Join us. Spread the word and help us raise money. Even a small contribution could make a difference." Adam's gaze turned serious. Jim's heart raced again, but this time it was for a different reason. He needed to take action in a way that felt significant, both for Kyle and the community. "Okay," he said, steeling himself. "We'll help. Let us do this together." They spent the next few moments setting up a booth, rallying others to contribute, and sharing Thompson's story. Just then, Kyle excitedly pointed at a dog wandering through the crowd, dripping wet but wagging its tail with abandon. "Dad! Look, it's just like Max." He beamed. Jim smiled at the sight. Memories flooded back of how simple moments of joy can mean everything. The chaos around them seemed to fade. As they stood together, side by side, they joined in the fervor of the chants and cheers. A sense of belonging grew, laced with the rich emotions of solidarity, bravery, and unconditional love, the very things heroes defend. But just then, Jim's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen, his heart sinking. It was a message from an old friend. Something was about to change. The text read, "Jim, I need you to come meet me. It's about Private Thompson, something you should know." Panic sliced through him, intertwining with the adrenaline that already flowed. What could this mean? As he glanced back at Kyle, standing amidst the vibrant chaos, a cold sweat broke out at the back of Jim's neck. They were on a path that could lead to life-altering revelations. "We have to go," he said, voice thick. He had a sinking feeling deep in his gut. Kyle looked up, concerned. "Why, Dad?" "I'll explain later. We need to figure out how to help more." They turned to leave the vibrant scene behind, shadows curling around them like the mysteries that awaited. Jim knew they were headed into something monumental. But what would it be? Jim's heart raced as they stepped away from the thrumming energy of the gathering. The sounds of laughter and spirited chants faded into a dull thrum behind them, replaced by the soft patter of rain against the pavement. Kyle, still oblivious to the weight of his father's urgency, skipped ahead, arms swinging with a carefree innocence that tugged at Jim's heart. "Dad, where are we going? Can't we help the dog?" Kyle looked back, his face bright, hope alive in his eyes. "Kyle, we will. I promise." Jim hesitated, not wanting to burden his son with the tension coiling within him. It's complicated right now. Just trust me." He pulled out his phone again as they walked, fingers trembling slightly as he reread the message. "Meet me. It's about Private Thompson, something you should know." Weeks had passed since he'd last seen Mike, a friend from way back, their paths diverging after college. Now, that text felt like an ominous whisper echoing in his mind. Did Mike find out something about Thompson that could change everything? As they reached the edge of the park, Jim spotted an old wooden bench beneath a leaky awning, a familiar place where he and Mike had spent countless afternoons in laughter and conversation. But today, it felt more like a meeting ground for reckoning. Kyle hopped up onto the bench, swinging his feet and watching pedestrians scurry by, umbrellas bobbing like colorful mushrooms in a rain-soaked garden. Jim took a deep breath and sat down next to him, feeling the weight of the world settle into his bones. "It won't be long," he said, trying to inject some optimism into the air. "I just need to talk to Mike, and then we can join back with the others." Minutes dragged on like hours. Each raindrop against the bench seemed to echo the swirling anxieties in his mind. Kyle was still, watching his father, sensing the tension in the air. "Dad," Kyle said quietly, breaking the silence. "Is everything okay?" Jim swallowed hard. "Yeah, buddy. Just some things are happening. But I need you to believe in me. I'll make sure we do the right thing." Finally, he spotted Mike emerging from the veil of rain, his lean frame cutting through the murky grayness like a beacon of familiarity. As Mike approached, Jim stood. A mix of relief and apprehension coursed through him. "Jim!" Mike said, his voice breaking through the rain like a trumpet call. There was a readiness in his step but also a shadow that Jim recognized. They embraced, a moment of camaraderie spun from the years of their friendship. "You've heard about Thompson?" Mike asked, motioning toward an empty spot on the bench. "Yeah. His dog, it's more than just that. There are layers you don't know. I didn't have all the pieces until now." Mike's voice dropped, pulling Jim in closer. "We need to act. Fast." Jim's heart began to pound anew, each thrum a reminder of the urgency of their situation. "What are you talking about?" But before Mike could answer, a sharp bark caught their attention. Kyle beamed, leaping off the bench. "It's Max!" he shouted, pointing nose first at a scruffy outline emerging from the rain-soaked grass. To Jim's shock, it wasn't just any dog, it was Max, Private Thompson's loyal companion, drenched but still sporting that signature wag. Jim's heart lifted before descending again with confusion. How was Max here? "Hey, boy!" Kyle shouted, kneeling down to greet the dog whose simple presence felt like a warm hug on a cold day. The simple joy filled the air, but at that moment, echoes of a troubled past tugged at Jim's sleeve. "What's going on here?" Jim murmured, facing Mike, whose expression was grave. "It's all intertwined. We can't ignore it if we want to help Private Thompson, we need to dive deep." Kyle stood up, scratching Max behind the ears, oblivious to the weight of the adult's conversation. Jim watched his son's blissful smile, feeling the heart of the situation tighten around his chest like a vice. "Jim, this isn't just about Thompson and his dog. It's about all of us. It's time to discover the truth." As uncertainty loomed, Jim's spirits lifted again at Kyle's laughter, mixing with the downpour, and he realized they weren't just getting involved, they were stepping into something much bigger than themselves. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, his phone buzzed again in his pocket. Glancing down, another message glared back at him: "We need you in this fight. Time is running out." What new revelation awaited him? They were venturing deeper into waters that could change everything. Would they be ready to confront the truth? Kyle's laughter rang out, bright against the rain, momentarily lifting the heaviness that clung to Jim's chest. Max licked his son's face, tail wagging as though he were the happiest creature on earth. But for Jim, there was a darkness lingering beneath the surface, whispers of secrets and shadows that threatened to envelop everything he held dear. "Where did you find him, bud?" Jim asked, forcing the words out, a thin veil of calm over his mounting fears. He pulled in a shaky breath, trying to channel a sense of belonging amidst the uncertainty. "I don't know. He came running to me. He must have heard me calling." Kyle exclaimed, quickly falling back into his delight, bounding after Max as the dog pranced around him, utterly carefree. Jim watched the interaction, every giggle and bark a moment of pure joy, yet the tension from Mike's warning weighed on him. "What's really going on with Private Thompson?" he pressed, turning back to Mike. "You say there are layers. What layers are we talking about?" Mike hesitated, his eyes darting toward the road where rain pooled like memories. "It's not just about the dog. Thompson is fighting more than you know, inside and out. He's facing something bigger than his injury, the loss of his comrades, the mental battle many don't see. The dog, he's a lifeline. But how that connects to the community, it's complicated." Jim's throat tightened. He had always admired Thompson for his strength, but that admired facade now felt fragile and worn. "We can help him. We have to." Mike nodded, steeling himself. "But we need to act now. There's a rally happening where they plan to ask for support not only for Thompson but for veterans like him, who feel invisible." He squeezed Jim's shoulder. "Next week, we'll gather people, raise awareness. I've got contacts at the VFW who can help. But we need the community rallied, Jim. We need to show up for him." Just then, Kyle trotted back, Max following at his heels, panting happily, blissfully unaware of the gravity of the conversation. "Can we keep him, Dad? Max can be our dog now," he exclaimed, All bright eyes and innocence, Jim knelt beside his son, ruffling his hair. "We can't keep him, he belongs to Private Thompson. But we can help him. Just like how Max helps Thompson. That's what friends do." "But Dad, it's not fair," Kyle pouted, his expression shifting as he glanced at Max. "He needs a home too." A pang of empathy surged through Jim as he contemplated his son's concerns. "I know, buddy. It's a tough situation. But sometimes doing the right thing means making sacrifices. You get that, don't you?" Kyle nodded slowly, deep in thought, not quite ready to accept the complexity of adult decisions. Mike broke the moment's stillness. "We need to help Thompson get Max back, but we also need to be the voice that advocates for him and others like him. It's crucial we rally support at the meeting. You'll understand soon, Kyle, I promise." Kyle's gaze shifted back to Max, who was now delighting in a chase of fallen leaves, vibrant against the gray backdrop. Jim's heart ached at the stark contrast of joy and pain around them. As they stood, ready to head back to the gathering, Jim pulled his phone out again. Another message blinked back at him, stark against the screen: "They're threatening Thompson. We're running out of time." The urgency hit like a cold wave, invigorating yet heart-wrenching. What were they really up against? Jim straightened, locking eyes with Mike. "We can't wait. We need to gather everyone. Let us bring Thompson's story to light before it's too late." Kyle bounced beside him, excitement bubbling in his youthful spirit. "Can I help too?" "Yes, you can," Jim said, fighting a swell of pride. "Everyone can." As they made their way back, a sense of purpose ignited within Jim. They were stepping into a fight for something more than just a dog. They were fighting for a man, for truth, and for the dignity of those who served. What challenges lay ahead as they shaped their course? The ties of friendship and community were about to be tested in ways they never imagined. As they approached the heart of their community, Jim felt the pulse of urgency thrumming beneath his skin. The rain had lightened to a gentle drizzle, but the air was thick with tension. Kyle stepped energetically in puddles, the splashes interrupting the serious atmosphere of their mission. There was a thought in the back of Jim's mind: every small action counted, and every person engaged could bring them closer to their goal. Mike walked beside him, his brow furrowed. "Jim, we need to tackle this strategically. We can't just spread the word, we need to ignite a fire in the hearts of the people." Jim nodded. "We need stories, real stories that resonate. I can speak to some folks who've seen the impacts firsthand." Kyle, overhearing part of the conversation, chimed in, "Like how they miss their friends? Like Thompson?" "That's right, buddy." "Just like that," Mike replied, his expression softening. "And we need to show that Max is not just a dog but a friend, a lifesaver, a bridge between worlds." As they reached the community center, Jim was taken by the sight of a few early arrivals, hands tucked into jackets, faces drawn with concern but softened by dull hope. It gave him strength to step up and lead this charge. They were already drawn together, bound by a sense of purpose. "Let us get them in," Mike said, his eyes glinting with determination as he opened the door. Inside, a wooden stage stood ready, and chairs were arranged in a semicircle, waiting for the crowd. The low murmur of voices filled the room, musical in its discord. Jim stepped up onto the stage, feeling everyone's gaze settle on him. "Thank you all for coming. Today we're standing up for a hero, Private Thompson, and his best friend, Max." The murmur quieted, and Jim felt a wave of energy. He started to share how he had first met Thompson, recounting tales of bravery and camaraderie, laughter interwoven with tales of sorrow. Every heartfelt word carried the weight of his own fears about loss, about sacrifices made, bonds formed under fire, and the importance of holding on to what mattered, the way Max held on to Thompson. Kyle stood beside him, his small stature a beacon of guts. Max helped him when he was sad. He's not just a dog, he's family. A ripple of emotion swept through the audience. Faces softened, eyes grew misty, and Jim could feel the room's heart rate pick up, syncing with his OWN. An older gentleman stood up, wiping a tear from his cheek. I lost friends too. We need to help him. Others nodded, voices rising in agreement. Jim's heart swelled. Just as he felt the momentum building, a flash of motion at the back of the room caught his attention. A figure slipped in, soaked but determined. It took him a moment to recognize the face. Thompson, his uniform still slightly damp, eyes focused and defiant. Private Thompson. Someone called out, rising to greet him. The crowd buzzed, a mix of surprise and excitement. As Thompson moved to the front, now visible to everyone, something shifted in the air. A collective understanding ignited. He stood straight, unleashing a long-held breath, a glimpse of vulnerability wrapped in valor. I didn't expect to see so many people here for me, he began, his voice steady, yet filled with layers of emotion. Max has saved me in more ways than I can count. But the truth is, Jim leaned in, feeling the urgency of the moment. What would Thompson reveal? What shadows had cloaked his bravery? The room was silent, hearts beating in anticipation. Then it dawned on Jim, this was the moment where everything could change. How do we fight for those who feel invisible? Thompson asked, his voice cracking with raw openness, challenging the crowd. With every breath, the tension grew. Would everyone rally around, not just for a dog, but for the very soul of their community? In that critical instant, Jim knew they had crossed a threshold. But what storms lay ahead as they wielded the truth? What revelations would spill forth once Thompson laid bare his fight? The air in the community center crackled with a mixture of anticipation and palpable emotion as Thompson stood before them, vulnerable yet resolute. Jim felt every single heartbeat of the crowd, every collective breath drawn as they leaned in, caught in the gravity of the moment. Thank you for coming, Thompson began, his deep voice laced with gratitude but heavy with concealed burdens. You all know me as a soldier. You see the uniform, and you think you know what I carry. But there's a darker battle that rages beneath the surface. This fight, it's not just with my body or even for Max, but within my heart. As he spoke, Jim watched the transformation unfolding in the room. Children stared wide-eyed, adults nodded knowingly, and someone in the back wiped a tear. The power of sharing pain struck a chord. It's been hard battling the memories of my fallen brothers, feeling like I'm less than a man. I thought I could go it alone, until Max came into my life. He brought me light during the darkest days, but I can't afford the care he needs right now. A heartbeat of silence settled in. Thompson looked around, intensity radiating from him. But I won't just fight for myself. I'm here for every veteran who feels like they're fading away, who believes their struggles go unheard. At that moment, Jim felt the tide rising. Hearts were opening, walls were being torn down as whispers of encouragement started blossoming. He's right. Someone shouted. We need to lift each other up. Veterans should never feel alone again. Yes. Another voice called out, igniting a chorus of agreement. Jim felt fire surging through him. This was the clarity he needed, a push towards unity. He stepped forward, heart racing. This is our chance. With Thompson here, we can shine a light on all our heroes, those who are here and those who have fallen. It's time we show each other that no one stands alone. We can raise funds, spread awareness, and most importantly, we can stand firm together. The crowd erupted into cheers, and every voice echoed a promise of solidarity. Kyle bounced beside Jim, his excitement bubbling forth. We can help them, Dad. We can be their voices. Yes. Yes. Jim replied, eyes gleaming with pride. Thompson looked down at Kyle, and for a moment, the weight of his own burdens lightened. You've got a good dad here, he said, a warmth creeping into his expression. And you have an even bigger heart, kid. We need people like you who believe in hope and connection. And just like that, a chain reaction sparked across the room, beach balls of inspiration floating from person to person. People began filling out donation forms, pledging time and energy to advocate for veterans, each promise illuminated with the glow of purpose. Realizing the vigor this event had unleashed, Jim moved back to the center stage, soaking in the swelling emotions. "We're not just here for Thompson and Max, we're here for every single veteran who thinks they have to fight their battles alone. Let this rally mark the beginning of change. Let us create a community where every veteran knows they're seen and valued." The echoes of encouragement traveled like a wave, lifting spirits high. In that moment, Jim realized they had crossed a threshold not just for veterans but for themselves as a family. Their burdens were shared, the road ahead brimming not just with challenges, but with hope. As the conversations flowed, emotion soared, Jim felt an inexplicable shift within his heart. He turned to Kyle, who stood beside him, his youthful face beaming with purpose. "This time, we're doing it together," Jim told him, tears of pride brimming in his eyes. "Yes, Dad. We're doing something good." Kyle's voice rang out, confident and bright. Outside, the storm had finally surrendered. The rain, once heavy and oppressive, shimmered like diamonds under the soft glow of the streetlights. A soft wind swept through, carrying whispers of hope for every dog, every veteran, and every family who had longed for connection. As the event came to a close, Jim stood with Thompson, a quiet understanding between them. They were warriors fighting different battles, but the heart of their fight was the same: love and healing. "Thank you," Thompson said, and Jim could hear the weight behind that simple phrase. "For helping remind me that I'm not just a soldier, I'm a part of something much bigger." "Always," Jim replied, a promise weaving through their eyes, and with that, a community began to embrace their shared mission of advocacy and connection. With hearts intertwined, they stepped forward together into a future painted with resilience, laughter, and love. But this wasn't just the end. No, it was the beginning. A new dawn broke over Cedar Grove, promising that hope could flourish amidst adversity. The love they found that day forged an unbreakable bond between Jim and Kyle, and it expanded, reaching out to every child, every neighbor, and every veteran. They realized that every action, every moment could ripple through lives, creating change where it mattered most. So, here's where you come in. You need to subscribe now. Join this journey, be a part of these inspiring stories, don't miss a beat. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help our mission grow. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this heartwarming transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Together, we can make a difference for those who need it most.